Welcome to all you storm watchers, storm chasers, and Leanierologists out there. Welcome to another edition of Tempest Talks, where we discuss lean philosophy, principles, and tools, and how they impact our personal and professional lives. Today, we will be discussing floor management with my good friend, Ivan Nunez. By way of introduction, Ivan is an experienced operations and continuous improvement professional with demonstrated abilities of working in the automotive and aerospace industry. He's skilled in lean manufacturing, Six Sigma, employee development, project management, problem solving, team development, and is currently the director of continuous improvement of the Cobham Advanced Electronic Solutions Company, a top-level defense systems supplier. Ivan also has a passion for learning with a graduate degree in industrial engineering and a master's in engineering from Baja California State University, and a master's of business administration degree from CETYS University, both in Mexicali, Mexico. He continues to develop himself through various training programs, such as lean manufacturing certification from the University of Kentucky, and is currently working on his policy deployment certification with the Lean Enterprise Institute in Cambridge, Mass. Welcome, Ivan. It's fabulous to have you.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Good day to you and to all the people watching and listening to us. Awesome to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, anytime. Ivan and I met years ago. Goodness, it's early 2000s probably.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say that. It makes us sound a little older than we actually are. Or are we that old?
I know. No, time applies different to lean people. So
thank you. I like that. I'm going to remember that. Yeah, we were working at the aerospace company in Chula Vista. For my listeners, there's been a few other individuals from that same company join us on this program. And what was your exact role? Because it was in continuous improvement in Mexicali, was it not?
Yes, I started there as a continuous improvement specialist. And then shortly after joining, I started there in 2010. And shortly after that, I got the opportunity to be the CI manager for that specific site, and then moved on to different roles. But yes, that's where we started together, at least learning from each other and sharing best practices back in the day.
Yeah, it was amazing. I'll never forget wasn't it the Easter earthquake that happened?
Yes.
Where the front face of the building fell off, but the process map was still on the wall?
Yes, the process map, the macro plan, the strategy deployment was still intact. However, we did not have the front facade for the whole building. And yeah, those were interesting times. It was good development as a team, as a leadership, because we had to get together and clean up, make sure that the business kept running, and at the same time, obviously, protect and make the people feel safe. So that was a interesting experience.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and it took some very special skills and skill sets to get the, floor management, our topic today, to get them, feeling comfortable to enter the building. If you're walking into the building and the whole front facade is gone, I'm sure there was some, trepidation there.
Definitely. And I mean, yes, but a lot of people were scared because they thought they had lost their jobs forever. Right. Many people were thinking that we were not going to be able to come back from that. And thankfully, we worked for a really good company, and they not only made it come back, but they came back better and stronger, which was great. And a lot of people, you can tell the sense of culture, the sense of ownership, because they were worried, but they were also trying to help to get us up in our feet faster.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, goodness. Very unique experience for sure. One that we obviously were prepared for because we were prepared for those kinds of things with policy deployment, but we're not expecting it. Let's put it that way.
No,
Thankfully, it was
exactly.
on Easter Sunday and nobody was in the building. That was a huge
Yes,
blessing for sure. Yeah.
that's correct.
Oh, goodness. Well, did I miss anything by way of introduction?
No, thank you very much. Very humbled, and I feel much older every time we go through all the timeline. But yes, thankfully, that's what got us here, and it gives me the opportunity to you and I have this conversation.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I've just loved our friendship over the years because we lose touch for a couple years, then we get back into contact, and it's like, oh my gosh, look at all this cool stuff you've been doing. So it's always fun to see you, be it at the airport or in other random places. It's wonderful to run into you all the time. It's great.
Yes, same as well, Michelle. I think it's something that we have in common. A lot of the mentors that I still keep in touch with, I would say similar lifestyles. You get
Yeah,
surprised. They're always moving. They're always doing great things.
yeah,
And to your point exactly, we ran each other last time in an airport because we were going to do improvement opportunities in somewhere, right? And
yeah.
it's just everybody that likes and is passionate about the lean tools, I think they're doing the same thing.
Yeah, that's a really, astute observation for sure. It's amazing just seeing what cool things people are doing for sure. So when I say floor management, what does that actually mean to you? Because I think it means things for different people.
Yes, and I like shop floor management for me is one of the best tools out there, right? And I think it's one of the tools I'm more passionate about. And that's why I wanted to have this opportunity to talk about it. However, yes, it does mean different things for different people. I guess it's based on the phase they are in their lean transformation, and also it's based on the culture that the company has
Yeah,
and the experience they've been exposed to. For us, we have similar backgrounds, we
yeah.
have similar trainings, and I like it, and I'm very passionate about it because for me, it's kind of the glue or the bridge
Mm.
that holds it together. And I know those two are different analogies, but it's the anchor that helps stay with the change that we just made, right? We're change agents. We like to go and improve processes, sales, whatever opportunity we're working on. However, this set of tools within shop floor management is what makes it stay together. It's part of the discipline that we need in order to sustain that
Yeah.
and make sure that everybody sees the benefits.
Mhm.
One of the things I like it is because, again, if you fail, if you're not successful, you don't see the benefits as we promise. And that's when
Mm.
people start to doubt about the tools. Does lean work? Does it not work? And I get very frustrated, very angry sometimes because the tools work. They're very simple. It's just the discipline and the follow-up
Mhm.
that we tend to obviously not make as well of a good job, and that's why we don't get the results. And this is one of the key elements or the key tools to make sure that we stick to those improvements and be able to get the benefits that we promised or we're looking for the business and our stakeholders.
I like that you say it that way, that it's the bridge and the glue, because it really is. Sometimes, some folks think of floor management as being they're the dictators that make sure that all of the product makes its way out up off of the shop floor. And so sometimes they're viewed in a really bad light, because they're driving people to get stuff done. But you're absolutely right. The floor manager and the floor management style is really where we can portray the benefit of lean processes and lean tools, and the success stories really come from there.
Yes.
And celebrating the team for what they've done. Very interesting way to put it, because it's true. There's the traditional, I like to call it the traditional way of management, right? And then
Yes,
the new way of management. The floor management that you're talking about impacts culture of the organization a lot more, in my opinion. Would you agree with that?
definitely, yes.
Yeah.
And I mean, going back to your point, if you work in a traditional environment and you implement these shop floor or management tools, it could be like a dictatorship. It could be something it's more muscle related. It's like, oh, you got to do this, and it's not going to drive the right culture. People are not going to be happy. They're going to work under fear, and
Yeah.
it could happen, and it happens many times because I've been witness of some of those traditional companies.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's harder to get in and start to change that culture. However, if you start a lean transformation in a process, in a cell, or at the entire site, you go through different phases, right?
True.
So one of the last phases is this shop floor management, but you have to go through some of the other previous steps in order to make sure that you're ready for that part of it.
Yeah.
And to your point about changing the culture, for me, yes, I think it's a big deal and it does improve or help because in our case, this is when we start to work on servant leadership.
Yes.
And I know it's one of those words that everybody throws around and it means different things for different people also. However, from my perspective, is empowering employees to not only help, but also make decisions, right?
Yeah.
So you hold them accountable, but they hold you as leaders, as change agents accountable too. So with that interaction is how you deploy or make servant leadership successful, right? So it's not only you working for them or vice versa, it's building that communication bridge between both parties to be successful. We all want the same thing.
Yeah.
So it's just openly and having the tools to support that.
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful. Because servant leadership it's been around, I would say, since the late 90s, maybe. They were starting to talk about servant leadership and some of the benefits from it. But I'd say in the most recent years, it's really become a topic of interest, particularly with how we manage versus lead, right?
Yes.
So some of the changes that we're experiencing, right, is like we want leaders, we don't want managers. So we've got a process that's in place, that's great. We've implemented some of these tools, that's wonderful, but people aren't really going to embrace the change or improve the culture unless they actually live it and experience it for a while. So it's more than just implementing the tools, like you're saying. It's about how we lead people to those tools and to using those tools. It's kind of a backwards thought because when we get into a business, we think, oh yeah, I want to be the manager. Like I want to be in a leadership position. And then when we get there, we're like, oh, I don't want this. At least some of us.
I know.
Where it's like, oh, I don't want to manage people. What we're really saying is we don't want to micromanage people. And so
Sure.
I've learned by making mistakes, when I've gone in and been a leader where I've been pushing tools or pushing a certain way of thinking, it never works. But when I'm a leader that pulls from the people, saying like, coaching them to understand why we're doing this or why this is a better way, and then letting them run it, it's backwards because you think as a leader you're the one that's leading it and managing it and running it, right? But actually it's not. It's your people that are leading it and managing it and running it, and you're there coaching them how to do it. So it's an interesting change in mindset. I think. I don't know. Have you seen that as well?
No, I think you're spot on, and I'm going to quote a couple of cliches, but I think it's the appropriate words. So you want people to learn how to fish, not to give them the fish or hand over the fish, right? So
Yes.
you heard that. So, but it's a journey, right? It's also something that I always tell the teams that I work. This is a journey, and we got to go hand by hand together with that journey, so we can be prepared to sustain and be successful, right?
Yeah.
However, the other thing is part of that culture is, but you get it when you go through battles together, right? So you
Yes.
talk about management and you talk about leadership. So again, being a manager can be easy, but you tend to micromanage people if you don't have the right culture, you don't have the right skills.
Yeah.
That's why as leaders, you got to work and develop your management skills like coaching, mentoring, giving the right resources, defining what success looks like, understanding the vision. So as a good leader, you got to practice those management skills.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you're a manager, you got to work or practice your leadership skills, right? So in this case is define standards, set clear objectives, train and support your people, right? And then monitor progress. So,
Yeah.
but you got to give them those tools in order to be a good manager, and then obviously develop to a great leader. So they're both connected, but it depends on where you are and the experience that you have. And like you said, another thing that came to mind is, we learn by failing. And one of the words or one of the phrases that one of our senseis used to use is you got to fail forward.
Oh,
Fail forward. And you and I used to learn the other one. It's 2 steps back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and that's okay.
yeah.
That's another way of seeing it.
Yeah.
And I've always remembered that going back to our days in the aerospace with J.J. Paris. So hopefully
Totally.
I'll get to talk about him later in this talk. But he was one of my great mentors, and he's the first one that told me is 2 steps forward, 1 step back is okay.
Yeah.
Don't try to be perfect the first time. Take people through that journey. Learn by failing, learn by making mistakes, but understand what the overall objective is.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Because it's true. Our standard work as leaders is very different than our standard work as team members. Our standard work as team members is more how to build the product, how to make it more efficient and faster cycle times and fix all the lead times and all those kinds of things. As a leader, our standard work really involves like you were saying, our goal setting, clear objectives, clear expectations of the team. If we don't give them clear expectations, then what we expect is always going to turn out not what we expected, if you will.
Yeah.
It's always going to miss the mark, always. If we don't communicate those things, they're never going to achieve them. It's true. Our standard work looks a little bit different, but to me, that resonates with me a lot more than the traditional management model, because I believe in building the bench strength than making myself out to be the be all end all. When I try to work myself out of a job, when I'm in a leadership position, and I do that by building my bench strength. So the people behind me, they're going to be better than I was because I learned from my mistakes, and I'm teaching them what my mistakes were so they don't have to make those same mistakes. I sometimes think about it as kind of like a parent would be. I don't have any kids, but I have a lot of nieces and nephews, and I try to help them understand the mistakes I made in my career, like decisions that I made or things that I wish I had done, and encourage them to not go down that same path, to try something different, so that they can learn from that. I would imagine it's similar to what parents go through too.
Yes, definitely. Being the proud father of 2 daughters it's given me a lot of experience on how to work with people, how to listen, how to communicate. But you're very right on. I always want our teams, our family, whoever we're talking about, better than us.
Yeah.
And that's since I got the opportunity to be a leader of people, it's been that. I want my team to be better than I am. And right now I can look at some of the people that I've worked and they are doing great. They're doing better. They continue to grow in different industries and within the same industry. And they're just kicking what, and they're doing awesome. And it makes me feel very proud because, again, that's one of my main goals is you want to surround yourself by a great group of people.
Totally.
And teach them as much as you can, support them to continue to grow. And what I've seen in some of other companies that are more traditional is that leaders don't want people or their teams to be better than them. It's like, I'm the boss. You give me all the information. I'm the one that's going to look good in front of the VP, CEO, whoever, or the board. And 10 years later, they're still in the same spot.
Yeah.
Because
they can't progress.
It usually doesn't give the.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, you're so right. This last year, in my organization, we've been putting in place daily management, essentially. So part of policy deployment, of course, is daily management and driver measure boards and that kind of stuff. And one of the unique things that we did was we gave it to the team to create. So it wasn't a structured, your board needs to look like SKU-DIP, for instance. We didn't give them a very structured board and you've got to fill in, each of these buckets. We gave them a blank board and we said, what's important to you to get your job done during the day? What do you need to know? What kinds of things, would prevent you from getting your job done? What kinds of things would you escalate that you need to escalate? There were a couple things that were prescribed, of course, like safety is number one and very important. We need to make sure that is put in place, if you will. We also put, employee development as being one of those things as well. So we gave them very specific things in a couple areas, but didn't dictate to them what they needed to achieve. And it was astounding, the response that we got. The teams were incredibly creative, incredibly engaged in the process. And some of the stuff that they came up with are, best practices that we're going to use across the organization. When we talk about standard work, most often we think, oh, it's got to be a very structured, look, everything needs to be uniform, that kind of stuff. That's absolutely true. But when you're in the creative process, I don't know. It was a new experience for me where it was like, wow, I need to do that more often, like give it back to the team and let the team come up with stuff rather than me create what I think is right, because guaranteed it's not going to be right.
No.
So what kinds of things like that, has worked well for you? Being the director of continuous improvement, there's initiatives that you're rolling out, of course. So what's worked well and what hasn't worked so well for you?
I'm glad you asked that question. And I was thinking of all the different examples that have worked and not worked. But I think that approach you just mentioned is great because basically you're planting a seed. You're giving them a vision. Hey guys, this is what we want to achieve, but I'm giving you the opportunity, the liberty to help me create that. And as long as we can meet the intent, I think it's going to be a win-win. So I've done it both ways. And again, I take it back to depends on where the company and the culture of the company is.
Yeah.
Sometimes they need more structure, they need more direction, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And you can give them the example, you can give them the formula, and they'll follow that structure and improve upon it later.
Yeah.
Sometimes the people is more mature, or the people, again, they don't like to be told what to do. So you gotta read the room, right?
Yeah.
And you just give them the challenge, and you get buy-in sometimes a little bit faster because they're the architects, they're the creators of that tool, that board, or that process. And as long as they help you achieve the overall goal, like I said, it's a win-win.
Yeah.
So in that case, I've done it both ways, and I've been successful in both. I've also failed in both, and that's how I've learned the differences. And right now, I can tell you the biggest difference is the follow-up that you do. So if you follow up correctly and help build that discipline, continue to use the tools, it's going to be better. It's going to be much easier. However, you approach as a consultant sometimes, and I don't want to bash all consultants because I think you and I have done consultant work. But
Yes.
if you don't follow up correctly, it's going to fail.
Yes.
One of the examples I can give you is when I got started here in CAES, Cobham Advanced Electronic Solutions. 3 years ago, we did the first lean transformation. We took the highest volume cell of assembly that was the heartbeat of this specific site here in San Diego. And we did the whole lean transformation. We blew it up. We changed everything around. We created flow. We had a very nice layout. But the management team, the leadership team, all the way from the VPs to the line leads and to the operators were there night and day for 3 straight months.
Wow.
It took that place to change the culture in 3 months.
Wow.
So every day they would show up at the tier meeting 1 or the kickoff meeting for the shift.
Yep.
Tier 2 with the support teams.
Yep.
Do the Gimbas, do the RTPRs or the pitch walks, and they did it together for 3 straight months. And that's when I joined the company. So I went straight to that exercise because we were there to support them, to work out all the issues that were coming up from a cell design, because obviously we're not perfect, and we found opportunities. We had shortages from suppliers. We had all sorts of issues. But for 3 straight months, we follow up, we were disciplined, and we helped them explain by doing that it was going to stick, right? We're not going to let it fail. And that's been the biggest difference that I've seen.
Wow.
If you go to another site that I've also done, and maybe because it's very far or it's in another country, and you only have the opportunity to go once a month or maybe twice a month, it doesn't give you the same results because as soon as you leave, if they're not bought into it or it's too complicated or at the first roadblock, it's like, nope, I told you it wasn't going to work.
Yep, I'm out. See, I told you.
Michelle is gone. Ivan is gone. Okay, let's go back to the old way which it was better.
Yeah.
So that's one of the differences. It's the follow-up. It's those conversations so you can make that discipline stick. Yeah. And again, you and I know it's one of the hardest things to do.
100%. 100% one of the hardest things. We both spent many months in diverse places trying to get some of this stuff, implemented, and some works better than others, but you're absolutely right. It comes down to that culture of discipline. So the folks in San Diego were able to do it in 3 months because they were dedicated to it. They wanted it to succeed. Sometimes one of our old senseis used to say to me all the time, well, the reason why it didn't stick, is it because you did it to them? Or were they part of the process? And I'm like, oh, right. I kind of came in and gave it to them. And he would say to me, see, then you made yourself part of the process. You didn't teach them how to go through the process. So that's why it failed. And he would say that to me over and over and over again. That was Bob Sterling. Over and over and over again. He's like, well, then obviously you didn't coach them, or you didn't allow them to be part of the process. You gave it to them. So how do you expect them to, to do it? They're not
Yeah.
going to.
You gave him all the answers of the test, right? So
Yeah. So they learned nothing. And that's probably the worst thing we could possibly do as a leader, is to not allow them to learn, to not allow them to be part of the process, to not allow them to fail, and to create, opportunities where they've got soft landings when they do fail. Yeah.
yeah, and I think there's a fine line there between, like you said, giving it to them or doing it for them
Yes.
and building it together. Because at the end, we are doing Kaizen, we are doing improvements because there's an opportunity.
Right.
And we do want to change, right?
Right.
So that's one of the first things you got. There has to be common ground. It's like, we have to do something different because we want to achieve different results.
Right.
So I'm going to take you through a process in order to do that, but I don't know the final result. And again,
Yes.
One of our mentors, I remember that from Bob as well, but another of our mentors, Jeff Riley, who we've met and we've talked to and we admire, is you got to take them through the process. You got to show them what it is, and you got to walk it with them, right?
Absolutely. I remember going through our Kaizen, our 2-week Kaizen event process, where it was the training, right? So the first week, it was our lean training, our boot camp, but the first week is all like death by PowerPoint. And then the second week was the virtual Kaizen event. And I remember during the virtual Kaizen event, Anna coaching us through the process, because as a facilitator, you're very similar to being, a formal leader. You're an informal leader in a Kaizen event. So all of what we're talking about applies to facilitation too. And I remember Anna coming in, and I remember being so frustrated because we had full action logs and action plans on our, what we affectionately called a to-do list, but we had full ones, like 4 or 5. And then Anna would come in and be like, yeah, you're not done yet. It's like, come on, I want to move on to the countermeasure portion. And she's like, no, you are not done yet. You need to go and attack the problem more. That was brilliant coaching leadership, because it taught us to not be okay with the status quo, right? So it was coaching us as students. Some of us were in leadership. Some of us were single, what do they call that?
Contributors, individual contributors.
Yeah. Some of us were in that type of role, but it taught us at the same time that, like, we should support each other in never being satisfied with status quo. Anyways, I just remember her coming through and being like, no, you're not done, identifying issues, problems, and opportunities. And I'm like, but we have 5 full pages. And she's like, nope, not good enough. Keep going. And it's like, oh, but it was brilliant coaching, because it made me change the way that I approach problem solving too, where it's like, no, I'm not done yet. There is always an opportunity to find more or to look for more. And that's essentially what a leader does, particularly on floor management, where they're pushing the team to achieve things that they didn't know they could achieve. So they're not status quo, they're achieving more. They're failing forward, if you will, failing forward, like you were saying. It's brilliant.
That's one of the biggest satisfactions of doing this correctly. When you see the surprise or the engagement of the people getting the results they couldn't imagine they were going to get.
Yes.
Right? It's like, wow, in the past, we only used to do, 20 units. And now we're doing 40 units, double that, with the same amount of people, or even with less people.
Yeah.
And all it took us to do this, to achieve this, was just eliminating some simple waste, and being disciplined about it. It's seeing that reaction and that sense of proudness, right? They're really happy. It's like, wow, we're really doing this.
Yeah.
We're driving change in it. That's when you say, it's like, okay, my job here is almost done.
Exactly. Ah, I love it because, since both of us have been in consulting kind of positions, I can poke on that a little bit. So as a consultant, I always say I'm trying to work myself out of a job. So when you no longer need me, I know I've done my job. If you come across a consultant that's trying to find more problems to solve, they may not be the right fit. Because
exactly. Something's fishy.
Exactly. They're looking for a paycheck. They're not really looking to improve your processes. So the consultants that are looking for ways to work themselves out of the position are usually going to be more impactful on the culture of the organization. Now, that doesn't help the consultant if they're so good at doing that they have no clients, but that's the consultant's problem. That's not the organization's problem.
There's always going to be new clients and new opportunities, and word's going to spread that you're doing a good job, and that's how they're going to come in, right?
True.
But I want to quote another one of my mentors' quotes or sayings that I learned. It's I do, we do, you do. Oh. So I've learned this, I think it was back in 2015 with Jose Caballero, who was the last GM I worked with in Mexicali before I moved to the States.
Right.
And when I heard it the first time, I was like, doesn't make sense. I do, we do, you do. So I started to learn that with them. It's like as consultants, as leaders, this can apply to any of the different roles we're talking about right now. It's like you're going to come in, you're going to work and predict by example, you're going to lead and drive that change. But at the same time, you're going to pull those leaders, formal or informal leaders, and you're going to start to do it together so you can transfer that knowledge, build that culture, and then soonly after, if you did a good job, that person's going to do it on its own. And that's when you say you do, right? So it's like my expectation is that you can do it afterwards when I'm gone, long gone. Yeah. You can continue to that forever and ever. And I just had a quick example, if I can share this. We recently, our family within the company is growing. So we got 3 new sites, all of them on the East Coast, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Massachusetts. And one of the sites is awesome. And we got to the point recently where it's like, guys, I'm working myself out of a job. I'm not going to come here anymore because you guys got it.
Yeah.
And I was very proud of having that conversation with the site GM because they just embraced it. And it was just doing that portion I just mentioned is I do, we do, you do it. We did a couple of events for lean transformations. We took a pilot line. We created the lighthouse. They really embraced it. They liked it. They learned it. And they right away said, okay, let me practice. Let me do it on my own. Just tell me if I'm missing something. And then they did another couple of events on their own. And right now they just embraced it. They're living the culture. They're practicing it.
Wow.
And last time I went there for the next couple of events, I told them, guys, I don't need to come back anymore. I think you guys have it. I'll be checking in. Please don't hesitate to call me. I can help you with other stuff, but I can see now you guys got it. You're driving change and it's part of your new culture. And that was a very satisfying moment of, like you said, building that culture and having that style be successful.
Wow. What would you say in the culture change process? What would you say is the best way to start that type of process? Is there a tool that you've used like I do, we do, you do most often, or is there some other supporting tools as well that you've used?
Well, it starts with building the trust. One of the things I was investigating or researching before we had this conversation was escalation of problems, right?
Yeah.
And if there isn't a culture of escalating problems, that's where you got to get started first, because you got to build that trust. If the company, the cell, the process, whatever we're talking about, if they don't like to escalate problems, if they feel they're going to get punished or they're going to get fired or they're going to be shamed, it's not building the right culture that we want.
Absolutely.
So the first thing you got to work on is making that environment the better as possible, build that trust.
Yeah.
So again, going back to our lean trainings, we see this as a golden nugget. This is a great opportunity. Every problem is a golden nugget that we want to embrace.
Yeah.
And I know it's very simple, but you got to make them feel that we want to focus on that problem, on that process, on driving that waste out.
Yeah.
It's not about the people. It's like, hey, Michelle, you were responsible. If I look at you doing that mistake again, you're fired. No. And I know it sounds exaggerated, but it happens.
It's true. It does.
I've seen it recently.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to build that trust. You want to make that a safe environment. And believe me, the companies that do that are the ones that are most successful and adapt easier and better to change, and obviously have better performance at the end of the day.
Yeah, for sure. And along with that, one of our other senseis used to say, Martin Lodge used to say this all the time too. There are people that can make the journey and can't make the journey. There are also people that are willing to make the journey and those that won't make the journey. So we've got to focus on the people who are willing and can, and ask the people who can't why they can't. Is it because of lack of knowledge? Is it lack of support from their leader, or something that's fixable, if you will? But those that are unwilling, we need to let go. Like, they're not going to change, no matter how many leadership programs we put them through, no matter how many team building events we put them through, they're never going to change. That's who they are. And the quicker that we find those types of leaders, and either put them in a position that they can do and are willing to do, or invite them to leave, which happens, invite them to leave, that's okay, because we're supporting the culture of leadership and management that we want. And the quicker we find those individuals, the quicker we can build trust, like you're talking about. Because trust me, the teams on the floor, they know who a good leader is and who a poor leader is. And they know who's going to support them and who's not going to support them. And they'll tell you quicker than you'll find out through a happiness survey, for instance. So we should listen to them, because that builds that trust too. So if we follow through and set up the organization so that they can feel safe escalating problems, that they do feel safe sharing their biggest problems and issues, then the better off in a leadership and floor relationship we will have with the main staff.
Definitely, yes. I think it's one of the cornerstones in order to making change go as smooth as possible, right?
Sure.
And yes, I agree. And no, definitely.
So I'm curious about your lean certification that you're going through for policy deployment, specifically with LEI. I'm interested to understand how much focus there is on leadership attributes through the certification program as well. Do they spend time on that also as part of policy deployment?
They do. I was surprised, but in a good way, the time and effort they spend, or they make you spend, on working a relationship with your peers. So in order to make sure that the strategy or policy deployment or whole chicanery is successful is by the amount of time you spend on making sure that you have the support and the buy-in, the consensus from your peers in order to work together to make it happen, right?
Brilliant.
Because you're not going to be able to do this alone. So
Yeah.
any good company that wants to deploy whole chicanery correctly has to obviously create that vision, understand the overall goals, but it's the middle point of getting the buy-in from all your peers, creating that teamwork, and making sure that you and I have those difficult but necessary conversations to agree, okay, if you want to achieve this by the end of the year or in 3 years, it implies that we commit to each other doing this, this, and this.
Wow.
And it's going to require resources. It's going to require time. So before you say yes, I want you to understand the impact it's going to have on you, on your budget, in order to achieve that. For me, that was like, okay, that was a different approach of how you and I probably learned it, right?
Yeah,
where it's
sure.
like, oh, you got to go do this together. You're going to work with those people over there, not go do it. But when you start doing it, you are first month, second month of the year, you're like, holy guacamole, how am I going to do that? And he doesn't have time. He won't pay attention. He has other priorities. So it's,
Wow.
you just make those conversations happen earlier in the process to avoid surprises. I think that's been one of the biggest aha moments for me.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic to hear about. Because I think one of the, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I think a challenge, let's put it that way, a challenge for successful companies in lean to stay successful in lean is to keep the journey alive. And what I mean by that is when you've got policy deployment in place, and I think the reason why we were taught the way that we were was because policy deployment had been, gosh, I think by the time I left the organization, they had been doing it for close to 15 years, 16 years, maybe 17 years.
Yep.
So it was a really long time that they had been doing the process. So they were kind of going through the process as a standard, but not really remembering what it was like when they started the process.
Yes, correct.
So like
that is
those
true.
first couple years, right? They were probably doing what you're describing, where it's getting the buy-in from their peers and building that rapport with their peers. But by the time we joined the organization and we're learning Hoshinkanri, we were going through the motion of, oh, right, this is death by meatball. So it's death by meatball season. I get it. But we didn't really understand some of the matrices and why they were what they were, because we knew we needed a spin chart, but the impact, what was it? It was a really complicated name. It was impact to countermeasure matrix or something like that is what it was called. It was a really complicated name. We didn't understand the reason why behind that. So I think for, some of the more progressed lean companies, if you will, their challenge is to keep the journey alive and real for people, not just creating like the crisis moment or whatever, but keeping why alive. So why do we do this every year? Why do we do a 6-month check-in to make sure that our improvement targets are what they are? Why do we go through this, very standardized process, if you will? Why do we do that? I don't think some of those companies do that very well.
No, in other words, is keeping that fire in the belly, right?
Yes.
Fire in the belly. I remember that. And it's true, because one of my other favorite tools is benchmarking. And I remember when I was getting started, I went and benchmarked how they did it in Chula Vista and Riverside and some in Foley, Alabama, and some of the more mature sites. Cool. And I saw it, and they were buzzing. They were like an automatic, which could be a good thing or a bad thing, right?
Right. Yeah.
Then I went back to my site and it was chaos. It's like, what do you mean you can't agree? What is this meatball for? It's like, I don't get it. What's the relationship? So the conversations were very different. And it goes back to your point about the experience that those sites had was better, was greater, and they understood what it implied. So for a newer site, they were earlier in their journey, it's like you needed to have those conversations,
Yes.
or else you didn't understand the intent of the tool,
right,
and how to make it happen. And that's something that I'm living currently. Is I'm struggling to. We're being successful in a couple of events and some of the activities, and they're like, okay, why do we want to keep driving this? There's no sense of urgency anymore. So it goes back to that fire in the belly. It's like, wait. This is a journey, right? It's not over. There's always opportunity. So right now it's driving, working with senior leadership to keep saying, hey, what's our next challenge? What's the next opportunity? How can we make this even better, right? And that's what I'm working on right now.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Keeping that fire in the belly going is critical. I think the last few years of Goodrich as an organization was recognizing that before they were purchased by United Technologies. They were recognizing that the newer generations that were coming in, and it was also a unique situation as well, because they were on it was almost a 30-year hiring freeze or something like that. It was a very long hiring freeze. So there was a huge gap between generations of who worked there.
That's true.
So I was 30. I was 30 something working there. And the next person in age to me was like in their late 50s.
Yeah. You were a baby compared to the average. Yeah.
And we were often referred to as the kids, right? Like, oh, it's the kids, coming in. So I think Goodrich recognized that there was a breakdown of the journey experience because of that hiring freeze. So everybody that was older in the organization, not meaning to sound ageist, but anybody that was older in the organization,
more experience,
more mature,
more mature.
They had experienced the journey, they had lived it. And so their management style or their leadership style came from a place of, I went to war for this. And so you're going to do it because I went to war for this. Whereas those of us that came in, we hadn't experienced it. And so our experience with the tool was much different than somebody who actually felt like they went to war together and established it, which comes across in our leadership style too. And what you're referring to with floor management as well. We're kind of that bridge generation between traditional management style and new way of management. And in some ways, those of us in this generation, we need to embrace that knowledge because we've worked in both realms. So we've got to share with the new generations coming into work what it was like. Because there were a few times, in my career, sorry to say, but there were a few times in my career where my life was literally threatened at work. That doesn't happen anymore, and it shouldn't happen anymore, but it did happen. And people are amazed every time I mention it, but a guy did come after me with a box cutter on the shop floor because he didn't want to wear a hairnet.
Wow. Okay.
You would rarely see that in today's world.
Mhm.
But the reason why I bring it up is we've got a unique opportunity as leaders and in a leadership position to share that experience with the new generation, to help them understand this is why we lead the way that we do, because we experienced this other side and we got no buy-in, we got no engagement, we got no movement in the right direction. So that's why we chose this other path and why it's worked for us. And
True.
so our coaching will be more meaningful, if that makes sense.
Yes, I think that's a great point. When you have people or generations that haven't been exposed, like you said, to the other side,
Yeah.
the more reason to do a better job in explaining why we want to drive change, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's more difficult. It's more difficult because there is no sense of urgency. There is no burning platform.
Yeah.
It's like nothing's gonna happen. Come on, relax. You're
Relax.
taking this to see exactly. So again, it challenges us leaders as change agents as well to explain. Okay, I understand, but there's always an opportunity to be better.
Yeah.
There's always an opportunity to get more clients, to get more customers,
Yeah.
to improve the bottom line. And it's more difficult. I know it's easier because I'm guilty of doing that in the past. It's like, oh, I wish we had
Yeah.
a problem that would drive this.
Oh, for
But
sure.
there's nothing. So sometimes you're trying to create chaos when there isn't.
Yeah.
But I mean, you just got to be more resourceful on
Yeah.
understanding, okay, explaining why we want to do this, what are the benefits, and just keep working and drive that discipline.
Yeah, for sure. Was there anybody in your, in your past that shaped your leadership style or influenced you the most?
Yes, there's been a couple of people, and I'm very grateful for all of them for being part of not only my professional journey but part of my life, because they influenced me on both sides of my journey. If I mainly stick to my aerospace journey,
Yeah.
it would start, yes, J.J. Paris.
For sure.
He used to be the best for shop floor management. He was the one that taught me talk to the people. They have the biggest information, and just be humble about it. And you're talking about a person who used to be the VP of Chula Vista, Riverside, San Marcos.
Yeah.
Then he got the project of opening the site in Mexicali. That's when I got to know him. And it was just great understanding his journey, because his journey was really awesome as well, as when he started as an immigrant, and then from the bottom as an operator, and then being all the way to the top. JJ, obviously. Then I got Jerry Sullivan, who taught me how to not only take those improvement opportunities, but how to build them into a business case. He was very business savvy, very finance savvy. So I'm very grateful that a lot of the things I learned from him. Mr. Jeff Riley, who you and I obviously know very well. I'm very thankful for his the experience I got working with him, those conversations that we've had about the triplets, standard work, about discipline. I mean, tough love sometimes, but I got the best learnings from him. RTPR, I don't care if you have to do other stuff, but you've got to be back here to do RTPR for the truss reversers here in Mexicali. Oh, I remember. And but a lot of great learnings, a lot of great examples. I mentioned briefly Jose Caballero. He's the one that I told I do, we do, you do. Very data driven, very passionate about making a quick impact and translating those into wins for the company. And he and I are still in touch. And I've seen his career grow exponentially. in different businesses, and he's a great person to keep talking. And last but not least, the person who gave me the opportunity to come to the States, Derek Prout. He currently works in Riverside, and he's the one that gave me a different perspective. He says, "Hey, Ivan, you know all this. You have the experience. I know you can get things done, but be more strategic, okay? Calm down, relax. You're here for a reason. And I need you to understand that part of your reason is to be more strategic and calm down a little bit." So he gave me a lot of great insights, a lot of great information. He and I are also stay in touch together. We play golf together.
Oh,
And
cool.
it's great to always have not only mentors, but friendships along the way
For sure.
that help you build as not only as a better professional, but as a person as well.
For sure. For sure. Some of those are close, close to my heart as well. Great examples of individuals that they get it. And that's the only way you can describe it. They get it. They know what needs to be done. They know how to make it happen. They get it. And I love finding individuals like that for sure. Mine are very similar to yours as well. Along, of course, with Bob Sterling and Greg Peters and Martin Lodge, and even peers, yourself included, Sam Walling, those peer relationships, John Sandor, they were great experiences with my peers, because I learned how to disagree and still remain friends through those types of relationships, for sure.
That's true. I remember, sorry to interrupt you, but I remember when I got started with that company, Goodrich, I remember that team, Bob Sterling, Sam Walling, Janice Barkley.
Yes.
It was yourself. I remember that's the freaking dream team of CI. And I was very lucky to be in that position and learning from all of them, because that's true. There's a lot of great learnings I got from all of them, right? And I know I didn't mention them because my time or my exposure with them was a little bit more limited, but
for sure,
all of them, I remember looking at them and admiring them, and it's like, wow, that's what I want to be in the future.
Yes, exactly.
And that's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's one of the key elements to leadership and floor management, is being able to recognize when you're wrong and accept when you're wrong, as well, because I learned that from watching the interactions of those teams, because they did not always agree at all. And some of those discussions were feisty when they did not agree. And we would often joke that you're in your purist mind right now. You're just being a lean purist. You need to lighten up a little bit, live in the gray. We used to have those conversations every once in a while. And from them, we got some of the greatest tools and concepts and ideas out of it through that disagreement. We used to call it, what was it? Violent agreement.
Violent agreement.
I think we're in violent agreement on this, which was really great. But I cannot believe how fast our time together has flown. This has been a fantastic conversation. I've just absolutely loved our relationship over the years, and how quickly we can catch up and learn the cool things that each other have been doing. It's just amazing to me. Is there anything that we missed that you wanted to cover?
Thanks, Michelle. Just emphasize that there's other great tools that work great with each other, right? So I know we spent most of our time talking about shop floor management, but shop floor management cannot be successful without leader-standard work, either for direct or indirect people. And I just want everybody out there to understand that you got to work and create leader-standard work in order to make sure you're successful in your shop floor management journey. And it's a very simple tool as well, and very powerful. And I wish everybody is successful in their journey, independent of where they are. But it's a great additional tool to work with and make sure that it helps you in your journey. So please don't forget about that.
Ah, fantastic advice. Thank you so much. Ivan, amazing. Amazing as always.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you so much for this afternoon, and for chatting with my listeners. We're small but mighty. And I wish you the best of luck in your current position. I know that the team is learning great things from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michelle, as well, to you as well, and goodbye to everybody.
See ya. Bye. Until next time.